So in our app component here in this event handler, onFavoriteChanged, currently we're displaying only a simple message in the console. We don't know anything about this event. We don't know if the user has marked an object as favorite or not. So we need to change our implementation and pass some data when raising this event. So back in our favorite component, here when we are emitting this event, we can optionally pass some value. And this value will be available to all subscribers of this event. In this case, the subscriber of the change event is our app component, because that's where you're handling this event. That's where we're getting notified when the state of the favorite component changes, okay? So back in the favorite component, we can pass an argument to this emit method. In this case, I'm going to pass this dot is selected. That's the new state of this favorite component, okay? So this is a simple Boolean, and in our event handler, we're going to get a simple Boolean value. So save. Back in app component, here I'm going to add a parameter. Let's call this is favorite, okay? And then I'm going to simply display this in the console, is favorite. And finally, the last step. Let's go to our app component.html. So here, when we are handling the change event, we want to pass a $event object to our event handler. I've seen this before. When handling the click event of buttons, we use this $event object, which is a built-in object in Angular. Okay. Now, previously, when handling the click event of buttons, this $event represented a standard DOM event object. Here, because we're dealing with a custom component, this $event could be anything that we pass when raising an event. In this case, it's going to be a simple Boolean value. Let's try this. So back in the browser, I'm going to click this icon. Now look in the console. Is favorite is false, okay? Now I'm going to click one more time, and this time is favorite is true. So this is how we pass data along with our events. Now back in the favorite component, here we're dealing with a very simple component. Maybe in your applications, you're building something more complex. So instead of a simple Boolean value, you may want to consider passing an object. So let's change this implementation and instead pass an object. This object can have a property like new value, and we set this to this that is selected. Okay? Now back in the template for app component. Here, our $event object now represents an actual JavaScript object that has a property called new value. And also in our app component, which is the subscriber of the change event of our favorite component, instead of a simple Boolean value, we're going to receive an actual object. We can call this event args, event arguments, or the arguments passed with the event. And then display it here. Now let's try this. So back in the browser, I'm going to click this icon. And then in the console, look at the event data. We have an object with a property called new value, which is set to false. Now, one last tip before we finish this lecture. If you're dealing with a complex implementation, perhaps you may want to apply a type annotation here so you get compile time checking as well as IntelliSense in this method. Now, one way to do this is to use inline annotation. So we can say this event args is an object that has a property called new value, which is a Boolean. It's a little bit messy, it's a little bit verbose and noisy. Potentially, we can define an interface somewhere else that defines the type of arguments of this change event. For example, here I can define an interface called favorite changed event args. So this interface represents the shape of the object that is passed along with the change event of our favorite component. In this object, we're going to have new value property, which is a Boolean. And then instead of this inline annotation, we can use favorite changed event args. And with this, we get compile time checking and IntelliSense. That's better. Now, if you're building a reusable component, you want to declare this interface in your implementation and export it from your module. And then any consumers would import this from your module. So instead of declaring this interface here, ideally we should add it here after our components. We're going to export this interface. So export like this. And then in app component, we need to import this type from the other module. So with auto import plugin, I can simply put my cursor here and press command and period and import this type on the top. So this is all about passing event data.